In the depths of Coruscant's undercity, where Imperial searchlights cut through toxic haze, a dimensional rift tears open the fabric of reality itself. The Empire senses a disturbance not in the Force, but in the very walls between universes. Something has crossed over, something that moves through shadows darker than the dark side. Something that strikes terror into those who prey upon the weak. Neither Jedi nor Sith, this shadow carries no lightsaber, commands no mystical energy, yet Darth Vader himself will soon discover why criminals across 1,000 worlds whisper a new name with dread. When a man who conquered his own fears confronts an empire built on terror, which darkness will prevail? A storm of unfamiliar energy tore through the darkness of an abandoned manufacturing sector. Space itself seemed to split open, crackling with blue-white lightning that scorched the nearby walls. The anomaly expanded, contracted, then exploded outward in a final surge before collapsing entirely. In its wake lay a man in black armor, unconscious amidst the settling dust and scattered debris. Bruce Wayne awakened to a world he did not recognize. His head throbbed with pain, vision blurring as he forced himself to stand. The Batsuit's systems flickered, trying to re-establish baseline functions. The last thing he remembered was pursuing a smuggler through Gotham Harbor when a strange device had activated. There had been light, unbearable pressure, then nothingness. Bruce tapped his gauntlet, attempting to access the suit's diagnostics. "Alfred," he spoke, his voice rough. "Alfred, do you copy?" Only static answered. He checked his surroundings methodically, noting the impossible architecture, the alien materials. This was not Gotham, this was not Earth. In the distance, he heard screams, human screams. Some things remained constant across universes. Bruce moved toward the sound, muscle memory guiding him through the unfamiliar terrain. His grapple launcher still functioned, allowing him to ascend to a better vantage point among the labyrinthine structures. Below, a group of armored figures surrounded a family. Their armor gleamed white under the harsh artificial lighting, rifles trained on civilians who cowered against a wall. Stormtroopers. Bruce had no context for what he was seeing, but the dynamic was clear, the powerful terrorizing the weak. In any universe, that was something Batman could not abide. "Credits and identification now," one trooper demanded. "This sector is under lockdown by Imperial decree after the energy surge." "Please," the man begged, positioning himself between the troopers and his family. "We're just trying to get back to our dwelling. We have nothing of value." "Then you have nothing to lose," the lead trooper said, raising his weapon. The sound of cable wire cutting through air preceded the shadow that descended upon the stormtroopers. Bruce landed directly on the squad leader, driving him to the ground with precision and force. Before the others could react, he had already moved, a blur of black among white armor. Bruce fought with calculated efficiency. These soldiers were trained but predictable. Their armor limited mobility, their helmets restricted peripheral vision. He exploited these weaknesses, disabling 2 more before they could properly aim their weapons. When blaster fire finally came, he was already moving, the shots striking walls and the ground where he had stood moments before. A trooper screamed as Bruce caught his arm, twisting until the blaster clattered to the ground. "What are you supposed to be?" the trooper demanded, voice distorted through his helmet. "Some kind of Jedi?" Bruce had no answer, only questions. He slammed the trooper's helmet against the wall, knocking him unconscious, then turned to face the remaining soldiers. One was frantically speaking into a comlink. Unidentified assailant, possible Force user, requesting immediate. Bruce threw a batarang, striking the trooper's hand. The comlink shattered. 3 more troopers remained, weapons raised, but uncertainty evident in their stances. They had been trained to deal with insurgents, with typical threats, not with someone like him. "Blast him!" one shouted. Bruce disappeared into the shadows above them before the order could be followed. The troopers fired wildly into the darkness, hitting nothing. From behind, Bruce descended once more, systematically neutralizing each soldier with precision strikes to vulnerable points in their armor. When the last trooper fell, Bruce turned to the family, who stared at him with a mixture of fear and wonder. "Go," he said simply. "They'll send more." The man nodded, gathering his family. "Thank you," he said. "Are you with the rebellion?" Bruce considered the question. "No, I'm just trying to understand where I am." "Coruscant," the man replied, confused. "Imperial Center, how could you not know?" "It's complicated," Bruce said. "You should leave now." As the family hurried away, Bruce collected one of the fallen blasters, examining it with clinical interest. Advanced energy weapon, military grade. The helmet from one of the unconscious troopers provided more clues through its heads-up display. Imperial Stormtroopers. Galactic Empire. Names and concepts entirely foreign to him. Bruce accessed the helmet's rudimentary database, absorbing what information he could. An empire spanning a galaxy, technology beyond anything Earth had achieved, species beyond human imagination. And something called the Force, a power wielded by those known as Jedi and Sith. The sound of approaching vehicles broke his concentration. He needed to move, to find a secure location where he could gather more intelligence and assess his situation. Bruce fired his grapple launcher upward, ascending through the levels of the Undercity, leaving the unconscious stormtroopers for their comrades to find. Above, the megalopolis stretched beyond comprehension. Flying vehicles traversed designated sky lanes, buildings reached impossibly high into the atmosphere, and multiple alien species moved among humans in the crowded walkways. Bruce remained in the shadows, observing, calculating. He had been transported to another universe entirely, one where Earth and its struggles were likely unknown. Batman had faced interdimensional threats before, had worked alongside the Justice League to counter reality-altering events. But he had never been completely alone, completely cut off from any allies or resources. Here, he was truly the stranger in a strange land. Bruce found an abandoned maintenance shaft that provided both cover and access to multiple levels. He set up a temporary base, using his suit's remaining power to scan for communications he could intercept. The Batsuit's technology was advanced by Earth standards, but compared to what he had glimpsed of this world's capabilities, it might be considered primitive. Still, adaptability had always been his greatest strength. Bruce began systematically hacking into nearby terminals, building a picture of the world he had found himself in. The Galactic Empire, risen from the ashes of something called the Republic, an authoritarian regime ruled by Emperor Palpatine and his enforcer, Darth Vader. Opposition existed in the form of a rebel alliance, fighting against overwhelming odds. It was a familiar story, told on a scale that dwarfed anything Earth had experienced. Bruce recognized the patterns, the dynamics of power and resistance. What he needed now was a plan. First priority, secure resources and intelligence. Second, find a way back to Gotham, if such a way existed. Third, survive. Hours passed as Bruce continued his research, moving through the Undercity like a ghost, avoiding Imperial patrols. He gathered discarded technology, components he could repurpose to enhance his equipment. His utility belt now contained several modified devices, including a rudimentary translator for the various alien languages he encountered. The deeper he delved into the historical records he could access, the more he learned about this galaxy's strange energy field called the Force. It seemed to be a quasi-mystical power, manipulated by those with innate sensitivity to it. The Jedi Order had once been its primary wielders, guardians of peace and justice, until they were systematically eliminated in something called Order 66. Now, the Sith ruled through fear and violence. Bruce considered what he knew of metahumans and magic from his own world. Different terminology, perhaps, but not entirely alien concepts. Whether this force was truly mystical or simply advanced, science was irrelevant. What mattered was understanding its capabilities and limitations. A week passed, and Batman had established himself as an urban legend in the depths of Coruscant. Stories spread of a dark figure who moved without sound, who appeared when Imperial forces abused their power, who vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Some believed him to be a Jedi in hiding. Others, a vengeful spirit born from the suffering of the Undercity. Bruce allowed the rumors to circulate. Fear was a useful tool, especially when outnumbered and outgunned. He had established several caches throughout the lower levels, stockpiling modified weapons, communications equipment, and medical supplies. His cowl now integrated salvaged Imperial technology, allowing him to intercept secure transmissions and track patrol patterns. On the 8th night, everything changed. Bruce was following a lead on an Imperial intelligence officer who frequented the Undercity for illegal business dealings, hoping to access higher-level information through him. Instead, he found himself in the middle of a firefight between stormtroopers and a small group of plainclothes individuals who moved with military precision. Rebels. Bruce recognized their tactics from the reports he had studied. They were outmanned and outgunned, likely, on a covert mission gone wrong. As Imperial reinforcements arrived, Bruce made a decision. These rebels represented both a potential information source and a counterbalance to the Empire's oppression. Batman descended into the middle of the conflict, batarangs striking the hands and weapons of stormtroopers with unerring accuracy. The rebels initially reacted with confusion, uncertain if this new player was friend or foe. Bruce didn't give them time to debate, moving through the Imperial forces like a wraith. "Fall back," he ordered the rebels as he disabled a stormtrooper with a nerve strike. "I'll cover your retreat." A woman with captain's insignia partially concealed under civilian clothes narrowed her eyes. "Who are you supposed to be?" "Someone who wants answers," Bruce replied, deflecting blaster fire with a reinforced gauntlet. "And someone who dislikes authoritarianism." The rebels didn't need further convincing. As they retreated down a maintenance corridor, Bruce deployed smoke pellets modified with components from Imperial stun grenades. The resulting cloud disoriented the stormtroopers long enough for him to follow the rebels, sealing the corridor behind them with a controlled detonation. "That won't hold them for long," he said as he caught up to the rebel group. "You need better extraction protocols." The captain studied him, hand resting on her blaster. "You're the one they're calling the Shadow of the Undercity. Thought you were a myth." "Myths have their uses," Bruce said. "Your operation was compromised from the start. There's an Imperial surveillance post 3 levels up that monitors all movement through this sector." Surprise flickered across her face. "How do you know that?" "I make it my business to know," Bruce replied. "Now, you have approximately 5 minutes before Imperial reinforcements block all exits from this level. I suggest we continue this conversation elsewhere." The captain signaled her team to move out, but kept her eyes on Bruce. "You're coming with us?" "For now," Bruce said. "I have questions. You might have answers." "Or we might have a blaster with your name on it," she countered. Bruce allowed himself the ghost of a smile. "You could try." They moved through the Undercity with practiced stealth, the rebels following routes that suggested extensive planning. Bruce noted their discipline, their coordination. This wasn't a ragtag group of idealists, but a trained military unit operating behind enemy lines. Eventually, they reached what appeared to be an abandoned processing plant. The captain input a code on a concealed panel, revealing a hidden entrance. Inside, more rebels waited, weapons ready. Bruce counted at least 20, with equipment that suggested a long-term base of operations. "Captain Vanya," one of them greeted her, eyes shifting to Bruce. "Is this the Shadow we've been hearing about?" "So it seems," she replied. "He helped us escape an Imperial ambush. Now he wants to talk." Bruce took in the rebel base with a tactical eye. Defensible, multiple escape routes, communications equipment that appeared to be shielded from Imperial scanning. "Your security is impressive," he said, "but insufficient against a determined Imperial assault." The Captain Vanya raised an eyebrow. "You're just full of good news, aren't you? Before we have any kind of talk, I need to know who and what you are." Bruce considered his options. These people were fighting against an empire that spanned galaxies. His own situation was bizarre enough without adding unnecessary complications. "I'm not from this galaxy," he said simply. I was transported here through some kind of dimensional rift. I'm trying to understand this world and find a way back to my own. The rebels exchanged glances, some skeptical, others curious. That's quite a story, Vanya said. Got any proof? My technology, Bruce replied, revealing his utility belt. It's not Imperial, not rebellion, not anything you'd recognize. And this. He removed his cowl, revealing the face of Bruce Wayne to these strangers from another galaxy. A calculated risk, but one that established a baseline of trust. I'm called Batman where I come from, he continued. I protect my city from criminals and corrupt officials. Here, I'm just trying to survive long enough to find a way home. Vanya studied him with new interest. Batman, she repeated. Well, that explains the symbol and the dramatic entrance. You said you have questions? About the Empire, about this force I keep hearing about technology that might replicate the conditions that brought me here, Bruce confirmed. In exchange, I can offer tactical support, intelligence on Imperial movements in the Undercity, and technology they haven't countered yet. One of the other rebels stepped forward, a man with the weathered face of a veteran. Captain, we should contact command. This is beyond our operational parameters. Vanya nodded. Agreed. But first, she turned back to Bruce. You've been operating in our backyard for a week, hitting Imperial targets. Why help us now? Because you represent organized resistance, Bruce answered honestly. Individual actions can disrupt, but not change. Systems require systematic opposition. A slow smile spread across Vanya's face. You know, for someone from another galaxy, you think a lot like us. She extended her hand. Welcome to the Alliance to Restore the Republic, Batman. Let's see what we can do for each other. Bruce accepted the handshake, aware that he had just aligned himself with one side in a galactic civil war. It wasn't his war, but for now, it was his reality. And in any reality, Bruce Wayne stood against oppression and injustice. What neither Bruce nor the rebels could know was that their meeting had already been noticed. High above, in the Imperial Palace that had once been the Jedi Temple, Darth Vader reviewed reports of disturbances in the Undercity. Tales of a shadow warrior who struck without warning, who disappeared without trace, who fought with skills that suggested training beyond ordinary means. Vader's mechanical breathing filled the silence as he contemplated these reports. The Empire had many enemies, but few who operated alone with such effectiveness. It warranted investigation, not by stormtroopers, not by inquisitors, but by Vader himself. Something in the Force whispered that this shadow was important, connected to currents and possibilities yet unrevealed. The Dark Lord turned from the viewport overlooking the endless cityscape. Soon, this shadow would learn the true meaning of power, the true nature of the dark side. And if, as some reports suggested, this warrior was sensitive to the Force but untrained in its ways, then perhaps Vader would find more than just another rebel to crush beneath his boot. Perhaps he would find an apprentice. The rebel base hummed with activity as intelligence officers debated the significance of Batman's arrival and the technology he brought with him. Bruce had surrendered some of his less crucial equipment for analysis, careful to maintain certain advantages. Trust had limits, especially among those fighting a desperate war against overwhelming odds. Your communications encryption is primitive, Bruce noted as he examined the rebel systems, and your identity protocols leave significant vulnerabilities. Commander Reelan, the base's intelligence chief, frowned. We make do with what we have. The Empire controls the primary manufacturing and research facilities. Sometimes the most effective solutions are low-tech, Bruce replied. He sketched a diagram quickly. This method of rotating frequency patterns based on physical keys rather than algorithmic sequences would be harder for Imperial slicers to crack. Reelan studied the diagram with growing interest. This is actually brilliant in its simplicity. Where did you learn this? I developed it to counter surveillance systems in my world, Bruce said. The principles of security remain constant, even if the technology differs. As they continued discussing potential improvements to rebel operations, Captain Vanya entered with a grim expression. "We've received word from command. They're interested in our visitor but concerned about potential risks. They want him brought to Alliance headquarters for full debriefing." Bruce straightened. "That wasn't our agreement. I share information freely, but I maintain my independence." "That's not how the Alliance works," Vanya countered. "We have protocols, chains of command, especially when dealing with unusual assets." "I'm not an asset," Bruce said quietly. "I'm a temporary ally with aligned interests." Tension filled the room as rebels subtly shifted positions, hands moving closer to weapons. Bruce had already assessed each person's capabilities, had already mapped multiple exit routes. He didn't want conflict, but he wouldn't surrender his autonomy. The impasse was broken by an alarm from the communications station. "Imperial patrol ships," the operator announced. "They're conducting a sector-wide sweep. Pattern suggests they're looking for something specific, or someone." Bruce moved to the monitoring station, studying the patrol patterns. "They've changed their search algorithm. This isn't routine." Vanya joined him, previous disagreement temporarily set aside. "You think they're looking for you specifically? Why?" "I've disrupted enough of their operations to warrant attention," Bruce reasoned. "But this level of response suggests something more." He turned to the rebels. "Your base is compromised. You need to evacuate." "We've faced Imperial sweeps before," Relan argued. "Our shielding has held." "Not against this," Bruce countered, pointing to a new signal appearing on the monitoring system. "That energy signature is different from the others. More powerful." Vanya paled slightly. "Star Destroyer entering low orbit. That's unusual for an undercity sweep." She made a quick decision. "Evacuation protocols. Now." The rebel base transformed as operatives moved with practiced efficiency, securing data, destroying what couldn't be transported, preparing to scatter to predetermined rally points. Bruce assisted, impressed by their discipline despite the growing dread he sensed among them. "There's something else," Vanya said quietly to Bruce as they worked. "The Star Destroyer identified in orbit is the Devastator." Bruce noted her tone. "That name means something to you." "It's Vader's flagship," she explained. "If he's personally involved in this search." The implications were clear. Bruce had studied enough about Darth Vader to understand the threat he represented. A Force user of immense power, the Emperor's enforcer, a figure of terror throughout the galaxy. If Vader was hunting him, the situation had escalated beyond what Bruce had anticipated. "You should leave with us," Vanya urged. "Whatever disagreements we have with command, we can protect you better together." Bruce considered the offer. Strategic alliance had value, especially against an enemy of Vader's caliber. But Bruce Wayne had never been one to hide behind others. "Your evacuation routes will be watched," he said instead. "You need a diversion." Understanding dawned on Vanya's face. "You're going to draw them off." "I'm going to draw him off," Bruce corrected. "Vader wants the shadow of the Undercity. I'll give him a shadow to chase." "That's suicide," Relan cut in. "Vader has killed Jedi Masters in direct combat. What chance do you think you have?" "I don't intend to fight him," Bruce replied. "Just to distract him long enough for you to get your people out." He checked his equipment once more. "Besides, I'm curious about this Dark Lord. In my experience, those who rule through fear often have the most to fear themselves." Vanya looked like she wanted to argue further, but was interrupted by reports of Imperial forces beginning street-level searches nearby. "We're out of time," she said. She fixed Bruce with an intense stare. "If you survive this, there's a safe house in Sector 9G, Sublevel 42. Frequency code 775 will connect you to our network." Bruce nodded once. "Get your people to safety, Captain." Without waiting for further discussion, Batman moved to a maintenance shaft that would take him to the surface levels. He had studied Imperial response protocols extensively during his time on Coruscant. What he needed now was to create maximum visibility while maintaining maximum mobility. Become the target that couldn't be ignored, yet couldn't be caught. As rebels began their staggered evacuation through hidden tunnels, Bruce reached the upper levels where Imperial presence was heaviest. He activated a series of devices he had planted throughout the sector over the previous days. Emergency systems failed, security doors locked or opened at random, and surveillance networks broadcasted conflicting reports of rebel activity across multiple areas. Chaos. The first tool in Batman's arsenal against superior numbers. Stormtroopers scrambled to respond to the cascade of incidents, their rigid command structure struggling to prioritize threats. Bruce moved among them like a ghost, appearing just long enough to be seen before vanishing again. Each sighting was reported up the chain of command, creating a pattern of movement that drew Imperial forces away from the rebel evacuation routes. Bruce knew he was taking an enormous risk. Everything he had learned about Darth Vader suggested a formidable opponent beyond anything he had faced before. But risk assessment had always been Batman's specialty, calculating odds and finding the narrow path to victory against overwhelming force. He triggered another diversion, causing an Imperial patrol transport to lose power directly above a major security checkpoint. As predicted, the resulting confusion drew additional forces to secure the area. Bruce used the opportunity to access an Imperial communications array, broadcasting a message on frequencies he knew were monitored by command-level officers. Imperial forces, he spoke clearly, voice modulator giving his words an otherworldly quality. Your presence in the Undercity brings only suffering to those already abandoned by your empire. Return to your masters. Tell them the shadows of Coruscant belong to me now. It was deliberately provocative, designed to focus attention on him rather than potential rebel activities. Bruce withdrew immediately, using maintenance ducts to move between sectors as Imperial chatter exploded across all channels. Orders were issued, movements coordinated, all centered on capturing the figure now officially designated a priority target. Bruce allowed himself a grim smile, Phase 1 complete. Now for the more dangerous part of his plan. He made his way to an industrial zone where massive generators powered the environmental systems for multiple sectors. Security here was minimal, the Empire considering the area too crucial for rebel sabotage. Bruce had other ideas. He wasn't planning to destroy the generators, merely to use them. Connecting modified batarangs to specific power conduits, Bruce created a system-wide power fluctuation. Lights dimmed and brightened across the affected sectors, environmental controls registered false readings, and security systems initiated contradictory lockdown protocols. It wasn't damaging enough to harm civilians, but it created a technical emergency that demanded Imperial attention. As predicted, specialized Imperial technical teams deployed to address the fluctuations. Among them, Bruce identified an officer with command-level clearance. He waited until the officer had separated from his escort before striking, a precise blow rendering the man unconscious before he could react. Bruce quickly accessed the officer's secure datapad and comlink, downloading tactical information and planting false intelligence suggesting rebel activity near an Imperial processing center the opposite direction from the actual rebel evacuation. He left the officer cable-tied in a maintenance closet where he would be found quickly, but not before the false information had been acted upon. Moving to a position overlooking a major undercity thoroughfare, Bruce watched Imperial forces redirect according to the new intelligence. Stormtrooper squads deployed in formation, supported by light armor and air support. The rebels should be clear by now, following their evacuation protocols, while Imperial attention focused elsewhere. A sudden chill ran through him, a primal instinct warning of danger. Bruce turned, scanning the surrounding area with enhanced cowl optics. Nothing visible, yet the sensation persisted. A presence, powerful and malevolent, reaching out somehow. The Force. Bruce had studied accounts of how Force-sensitive individuals could detect others at a distance, could sense disturbances and intentions. If Vader possessed such abilities, as all reports indicated, then perhaps Bruce's thoughts were interrupted by the distinctive sound of mechanized breathing. Heavy, regulated, unmistakable even before he turned to face its source. Standing on a platform extending from an adjacent structure was a figure in black armor, cape billowing slightly in the artificial currents of the city planet's processed atmosphere. Darth Vader had found him, the shadow of the Undercity. Vader's deep, modulated voice resonated in the space between them. Your disruptions have become tiresome. Bruce assessed his opponent with a tactician's eye. Nearly 7 feet tall, armed with the lightsaber attached to his belt. According to everything Bruce had learned, capable of telekinetic attacks, enhanced physical abilities, and possibly telepathic intrusion, conventional weapons would be ineffective, direct confrontation suicidal. Lord Vader, Bruce acknowledged, voice calm despite the danger. I wondered if you might take a personal interest in Undercity security. Your attempts at misdirection failed, Vader stated. I sensed your presence the moment I entered this sector. He extended a gloved hand, palm forward. Your rebel allies have already been captured. Their evacuation routes were compromised days ago. Bruce didn't allow himself to react visibly, though inwardly he calculated new variables. Vader could be lying, attempting to provoke an emotional response. Even if true, Bruce's responsibility was to survive this encounter, to find a way to fight another day. I have no allies, Bruce replied, only temporary interests that aligned with theirs. Your deception is pointless, Vader said. I sense your concern for them, your misplaced loyalty. It betrays you, as does your fear. Bruce felt a strange pressure against his mind, an alien presence attempting to push through his mental defenses. His training in meditation and resistance to psychic influence developed during his studies in Tibet and refined through encounters with metahumans on Earth provided some protection, but he could feel Vader's power testing those barriers. Interesting, Vader observed. Your mind is disciplined, yet you are not trained in the ways of the Force. The Dark Lord ignited his lightsaber, the crimson blade humming with deadly energy. Perhaps you will be more forthcoming under proper interrogation. Bruce knew he needed to move, to find distance and leverage against an opponent who outmatched him in direct confrontation. As Vader stepped forward, Bruce threw 3 smoke pellets, creating a thick cloud between them. Simultaneously, he fired his grapple launcher toward an overhead conduit, intending to swing to an adjacent platform. He never completed the maneuver. Mid-air, Bruce felt an invisible grip close around his body, halting his momentum and holding him suspended. The pressure increased, constricting painfully around his chest as he was drawn back toward Vader, who stood with one hand extended, smoke dissipating around him as though pushed away by an unseen force. Your tactics are resourceful, Vader acknowledged, but ultimately futile against the power of the dark side. Bruce struggled against the invisible restraint, every muscle straining against the impossible hold. His utility belt contained countermeasures for many threats, but nothing designed to combat telekinetic abilities of this magnitude. As he was pulled closer to Vader's outstretched hand, Bruce reached for his last resort, a modified sonic emitter designed to disrupt electronic systems. The device activated with a high-pitched whine, frequencies calibrated to overwhelm sensory inputs and damage communication systems. Vader's armor contained life support systems, audio processors, control mechanisms, all potentially vulnerable to such disruption. For a crucial moment, the telekinetic grip faltered. Bruce dropped to the platform, rolling immediately to create distance. Vader's respirator hitched, its rhythm disrupted by the sonic attack. The Dark Lord raised his hand, and the emitter crumpled as though crushed by an invisible fist. Impressive, Vader said, his breathing stabilizing. Few have managed to break my hold. Your technology is unusual. Bruce didn't waste breath on response, instead using the momentary advantage to throw a series of modified batarangs. They detonated near Vader, not with explosive force but with brilliant, blinding light designed to overwhelm optical sensors. Again, Vader seemed momentarily affected, his movements slowing as he adjusted to the assault on his helmet's systems. Bruce used the opportunity to attack directly, striking at joints and connection points in the Sith Lord's armor with precise, powerful blows. It was like hitting solid durasteel. Vader seemed to absorb the impacts with minimal effect, his lightsaber moving in a crimson arc that Bruce barely evaded. The blade passed close enough for Bruce to feel its heat through his reinforced suit, to smell the ozone it left in its wake. "Your combat skills are exceptional," Vader observed, his voice unnervingly calm despite the battle. "You have faced warriors before." "I've faced worse," Bruce replied, though in truth he wasn't certain that was accurate. He needed to end this encounter before Vader fully adapted to his tactics. Every second the confrontation continued, the Sith Lord learned more about his capabilities, his limitations. Bruce activated his suit's electrical discharge system, channeling power from his remaining reserves into a localized electromagnetic pulse. It was a desperate measure, potentially leaving his own systems compromised, but if it could disrupt Vader's life support even temporarily. The pulse fired, and for a moment, Vader's respirator faltered again. The lightsaber flickered but did not extinguish. Bruce pressed the advantage, firing a cable that wrapped around Vader's sword arm, attempting to restrain the deadly weapon. Vader simply pulled, using Bruce's own restraint against him, drawing him forward into striking range. Bruce released the cable mechanism, but not before Vader's free hand closed around his throat, lifting him from the ground with terrifying strength. "Enough," Vader said. "Your resistance is admirable but pointless. Now you will answer my questions." Bruce felt the pressure in his mind increase, Vader's presence pushing against his mental defenses with far greater force than before. Images began to surface unbidden: Gotham's skyline, the Batcave, fragments of memories from a world away. With supreme effort, Bruce focused on a single memory: the death of his parents, the defining trauma of his existence. He had used this memory before as a focal point during psychic attacks, the emotional intensity serving as both shield and weapon against mental intrusion. Vader suddenly released him, stepping back as though struck. Bruce collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath, feeling blood vessel ruptures around his eyes from the strain of resisting the mental probe. "Your pain," Vader said, his voice altered somehow, less mechanical and more contemplative. "I felt it, the loss, the vow made in darkness." A pause as the Dark Lord seemed to reassess his opponent. "You are not of this galaxy." Bruce struggled to his feet, swaying slightly but refusing to show weakness. "No," he confirmed. "I was brought here against my will. I have no interest in your empire or your rebellion. I only want to return to my world." The dimensional anomaly detected in this sector, Vader realized. You were the cause. He deactivated his lightsaber but remained no less threatening. "The Emperor will be most interested in the technology that brought you here." "That technology isn't mine," Bruce said, "and I don't have it. I was pursuing a criminal who activated a device. There was an energy surge, and I woke up here." Vader was silent for a moment, the only sound his regulated breathing. "The Force surrounds you, yet you do not wield it." Curious. Another pause. "You fight against disorder, against criminal elements. You seek justice, yet you operate outside official sanction." Bruce felt as though Vader was seeing through him, understanding motivations that he had never voiced aloud. "I do what's necessary," he said simply. "As do I," Vader replied. To Bruce's surprise, the Dark Lord turned away, cape swirling around his armored form. "You will come with me. The Emperor desires to meet all potential assets, or threats." "I'm not going anywhere with you," Bruce stated firmly. Vader looked back over his shoulder. "That was not a request. Either you accompany me willingly, or I will take what information I need from your mind and leave your broken body for the stormtroopers to find." Bruce calculated his options. Fighting further would likely end in defeat or death. Capture meant potential access to Imperial resources, perhaps even technology that could help him return to Earth. It was a risk, but one with potential reward. "After you," Bruce said with grim resignation. Vader led him to a waiting Imperial shuttle, stormtroopers forming a perimeter at a respectful distance. Bruce noted the fear in their posture when Vader passed, the way they seemed to hold their breath until the Dark Lord had moved beyond them. This was not mere respect for authority, but terror of what Vader represented and what he could do. As they boarded the shuttle, Bruce caught a glimpse of the Star Destroyer looming in the sky above Coruscant. The Devastator. A fitting name for a vessel commanded by someone like Vader. Bruce had faced psychopaths, criminal masterminds, even beings with godlike powers. But something about Vader suggested a different kind of threat, power wedded to purpose, strength guided by absolute conviction. The shuttle doors closed, sealing Bruce inside with the Dark Lord of the Sith. Whatever came next would determine not only his fate in this galaxy, but perhaps the possibility of ever returning to his own. He had survived the first encounter with Vader, but Bruce harbored no illusions about the challenges ahead. The Dark Knight and the Dark Lord ascended toward the Devastator, two shadows cast by different darknesses, bound together by the strange currents of fate and the Force. The Imperial shuttle docked with clinical precision inside the Devastator's main hangar bay. Bruce observed everything with analytical detachment, the scale of operations, the military efficiency, the hierarchy evident in how officers and stormtroopers positioned themselves as Vader disembarked. "You will surrender your weapons and equipment," Vader instructed as they exited the shuttle, flanked by death troopers whose black armor marked them as elite forces. Bruce considered refusing, but recognized the futility of such resistance in his current position. "Some components of my suit are integrated with life support functions," he said. Instead, a partial truth that might allow him to retain certain advantages. Vader seemed to assess the claim. "Your deception skills are considerable, but unnecessary in this instance. Your equipment will be examined, not destroyed. You will receive it back if the Emperor deems you cooperative." Bruce removed his utility belt, gauntlets, and exterior armor components, retaining only the basic bodysuit. Imperial officers approached cautiously to collect the items, treating them with the care one might afford volatile explosives. A wise precaution, given that several of the devices were indeed rigged with defensive countermeasures. "This way," Vader directed, leading Bruce not toward detention cells but to what appeared to be private quarters. The room was spartanly furnished, with a meditation chamber dominating one section. "You will remain here until I return, attempt to leave, and the consequences will be severe." As Vader turned to exit, Bruce spoke. "The rebels you mentioned, were they actually captured?" Vader paused at the threshold. "Some escaped, others did not. Their fate need not concern you now." After the Dark Lord departed, Bruce immediately began examining his surroundings. The quarters were undoubtedly monitored, but that didn't preclude gathering intelligence. The viewport offered a staggering view of Coruscant below, reinforcing the sheer scale of the Empire's capital world. More importantly, computer terminals and communication systems provided potential access points, assuming he could bypass Imperial security protocols. Bruce had retained micro-tools hidden in the seams of his bodysuit, foreseeing the possibility of capture. While outwardly appearing to simply rest on the provided seating, he was mentally mapping approaches to the computer systems, calculating risk factors and potential rewards. Hours passed before the door opened again. Bruce had made minimal progress with the terminals, Imperial security proving more sophisticated than anticipated without his full array of equipment. When Vader entered, he was accompanied by an officer whose insignia identified him as an admiral. "Lord Vader, I must protest," the admiral was saying. "The Emperor has not authorized diverting from our primary mission to investigate anomalies on your concerns are noted, Admiral Ozell," Vader interrupted. "Nevertheless, we will proceed to the coordinates I have provided. The Emperor will be informed of my decision." The Admiral's face tightened with barely suppressed fear and resentment. "Yes, my lord." He departed quickly, posture rigid with tension. Vader turned his attention to Bruce. Your equipment contains technology unknown to our engineers. Attempts to analyze its components have been problematic. Bruce allowed himself a small measure of satisfaction. The security systems are designed to resist tampering. So we discovered, Vader replied. 2 technicians required medical attention. He moved to the viewport, hands clasped behind his back. I have consulted with the Emperor regarding your situation. He believes your arrival may be connected to disturbances we have detected in the Force. Echoes from beyond known space. Bruce processed this information carefully. You believe whatever brought me here was not an isolated incident. The Force works through no coincidence, Vader stated. Your arrival, your abilities, your purpose, all are connected to larger currents within the Force. The Emperor senses this, as do I. I don't share your mystical perspective, Bruce said. Where I come from, even seemingly supernatural events have rational explanations. A limited viewpoint, Vader dismissed. One you will overcome in time. He turned back to face Bruce. We are setting course for the coordinates where your dimensional transfer occurred. The Emperor believes residual energy signatures may provide insights into the nature of your crossing between worlds. This was unexpected. Bruce had assumed he would be taken directly to the Emperor, not back to the site of his arrival. Why would Palpatine authorize such a diversion? From what I understand, he rarely concerns himself with scientific curiosities. Vader's respirator completed 2 full cycles before he answered. The Emperor's interest lies not in your technology, but in the barriers between realities that it has revealed. Such knowledge has applications beyond your understanding. Bruce understood more than Vader might assume. Interdimensional travel, barriers between worlds, these concepts weren't entirely foreign to him after his experiences with the Justice League. If Palpatine sought such knowledge, his motivations were unlikely to be benevolent. And what happens if your investigation is successful? Bruce asked. If you discover how to replicate the conditions that brought me here, then perhaps you may yet return to your Gotham, Vader said, if that remains your desire. The implied condition was clear: cooperation in exchange for potential passage home. Bruce had made such deals before, temporary alliances with dangerous individuals when objectives aligned. The risk was always the same, that in working toward a shared goal, one might enable a greater evil. I'll assist your investigation, Bruce said carefully. My expertise in certain areas may prove useful, but I want full access to your findings and any technology developed as a result. You are not in a position to negotiate terms, Vader reminded him. However, your cooperation will be acknowledged. For now, that must suffice. The Devastator entered hyperspace shortly thereafter, stars stretching into streaks of light before resolving into the swirling blue tunnel of faster-than-light travel. Bruce had seen many wonders in his career as Batman, but the casual manner in which this civilization traversed interstellar distances remained humbling. During the journey, Bruce was permitted limited access to Imperial databases, ostensibly to provide context for his analysis of the dimensional anomaly. In reality, he absorbed everything he could about Imperial technology, governance structures, and military capabilities. Knowledge that might prove crucial if his alliance with Vader proved as temporary as he anticipated. 3 days into the voyage, alarms sounded throughout the ship. Bruce felt the subtle shift as the Star Destroyer dropped out of hyperspace unexpectedly. The door to his quarters opened, and a squad of stormtroopers entered, weapons ready. Lord Vader commands your presence on the bridge, their leader stated. Bruce complied without resistance, following his escort through the massive vessel. The corridors were filled with purposeful activity, crew members moving with the heightened alertness of battle stations. Something had occurred, something significant enough to interrupt their journey. The bridge of the Devastator stretched before him, a marvel of Imperial design and efficiency. Crew pits sunken below walkways, massive viewports revealing the starfield beyond, and at the center of it all, Vader's imposing figure silhouetted against the stars. Approach, Vader commanded without turning. Bruce moved to stand beside the Dark Lord, following his gaze to the scene outside. A rebel fleet hung in space before them, clearly caught mid-transit between hyperspace jumps. Smaller than the Imperial forces, but significant nonetheless, several capital ships, squadrons of fighters, support vessels. And opposing them, not just the Devastator, but 2 additional Star Destroyers that must have been lying in wait. An ambush, Bruce observed. Yes, Vader confirmed, based on intelligence extracted from the rebels captured on Coruscant. Bruce felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. Those who had escaped capture had likely led Imperial forces directly to this rendezvous point, unaware they were being tracked. How many had been tortured for information? How many had died to set this trap? "You brought me here to witness this," Bruce stated. "Not a question. To understand the futility of resistance against the Empire," Vader corrected, "and to observe the consequences of misplaced loyalty." Before them, the battle had already begun. TIE fighters swarmed from the Star Destroyers, green laser fire cutting through the void. The rebel ships returned fire, attempting to form a defensive perimeter, while smaller vessels prepared for emergency hyperspace jumps. "They cannot escape," Vader said with cold certainty. "All possible vectors have been calculated. Interdictor cruisers are positioned to prevent hyperspace travel." Bruce watched as the rebel forces fought with desperate courage against overwhelming odds. Their tactics were impressive: coordinated fighter screens, concentrated fire on vulnerable points of the Imperial vessels, sacrificial maneuvers to cover retreating ships. But Vader was right, there would be no escape from this carefully orchestrated trap. "You see now the price of defiance," Vader continued. "The rebels you aided, the cause you momentarily served, all will be extinguished in time. The Emperor's vision allows for no alternative. I've seen tyrants before. They all share the same flaw. They believe fear equals control. It doesn't. Fear breeds resistance. Always. A philosophy that has served you in your limited domain," Vader dismissed. "The Empire operates on a scale beyond your comprehension. Individual resistance is irrelevant against such power." A massive explosion illuminated the viewport as one of the rebel cruisers succumbed to concentrated fire. Bruce watched silently, cataloging every detail of Imperial tactics, ship capabilities, weapon systems, information that might seem useless now, but could prove vital later. "You believe this demonstration will convince me to abandon any sympathy for the rebellion," Bruce said. "You misunderstand what drives me. I don't choose sides based on who's winning." "No," Vader agreed unexpectedly. "You choose based on your own rigid code, your sense of justice." The Dark Lord turned from the viewport. "A trait we share, though our definitions may differ." Before Bruce could respond to this disturbing comparison, Admiral Ozzel approached, his expression revealing mixed triumph and apprehension. "Lord Vader, the rebel flagship is disabled. Their command ship attempts to flee with escort vessels." "Disable their engines but preserve the command ship intact," Vader ordered. "I will personally oversee the interrogation of their leadership." As the Admiral moved to relay the commands, Vader returned his attention to Bruce. "You will accompany me when we board their vessel. Perhaps witnessing Imperial justice firsthand will clarify your perspective." Bruce recognized the invitation for what it was: another test, another attempt to break his resolve or corrupt his principles. "I won't participate in torture or execution," he stated firmly. "Your participation is not required," Vader replied. "Merely your presence. What you choose to do with what you observe is your own decision." The battle continued with merciless efficiency, Imperial forces systematically dismantling the rebel fleet. Bruce watched, outwardly impassive but inwardly calculating. Vader was deliberately exposing him to the Empire's methods, its power, its absolutism, showing him the apparent inevitability of Imperial victory. What Vader couldn't know was that Bruce Wayne had built his entire life around defying inevitabilities, around finding the narrow path through impossible odds. Every detail he absorbed about Imperial tactics, technology, and psychology was another piece in the puzzle, another potential vulnerability to exploit when the moment came. and that moment would come. Batman always found a way. Hours later, Bruce stood in a docking bay as stormtroopers secured a rebel command ship that had been towed into the Devastator's hangar. The vessel showed extensive damage, its hull scarred by laser impacts, life support systems barely functioning. Survivors were being roughly extracted from the wreckage, some wounded, all defiant despite their capture. Bruce recognized Captain Vanya among them, her face bloodied, but her posture unbowed as stormtroopers forced her to her knees alongside other rebel officers. She caught sight of him standing near Vader, and her expression hardened, betrayal and contempt evident in her eyes. "The so-called Alliance leadership," Vader announced, moving forward to inspect the captives. "Your fleet is destroyed, your cause is lost. Now you will provide the locations of all remaining rebel bases." "We'll tell you nothing," a gray-haired woman with general's insignia responded. "Kill us if you must. Others will rise to take our place." "Death would be a mercy I do not intend to grant," Vader replied. He turned slightly toward Bruce. "This is the rebellion you briefly allied with. Observe their defiance. It will not last." Bruce remained silent, his mind working through scenarios and possibilities. The situation appeared hopeless for the captured rebels, yet experience had taught him that apparent hopelessness often concealed unexpected opportunities. He needed more information, more time to formulate a plan. Vader approached Vanya directly. "Captain, we have already extracted considerable intelligence from your compatriots on Coruscant. Your resistance will only prolong the inevitable." Vanya spat blood at Vader's boots. "Do what you want with me. I joined this fight knowing the risks." "Not for yourself, perhaps," Vader countered, "but for your comrades, your family on Alderaan." He gestured to a stormtrooper commander. "Bring the prisoners to detention level, prepare them for interrogation." As the rebels were led away, Vanya locked eyes with Bruce once more. This time, beneath the anger, he saw something else. A question, a challenge. Did he stand with the Empire now, or was there still a choice to be made? Vader dismissed the remaining officers, leaving himself alone with Bruce in the hangar bay. "You disapprove of our methods," the Dark Lord observed. "I disapprove of injustice in any form," Bruce replied evenly. "Torture, summary execution, rule through terror. These aren't the actions of a legitimate government but of oppressors." "A simplistic view," Vader said. "The Empire brings order to chaos, stability to regions plagued by centuries of conflict. The methods you find so distasteful are necessary to maintain that order." "I've heard that justification before," Bruce countered. "From every dictator and warlord in history, the ends never justify such means." Vader's mechanical breathing filled the silence between them. "You cling to ideals that have no place in the reality of this galaxy. The rebels you defend would sacrifice millions for their abstract concept of freedom. The Empire sacrifices thousands to save billions. That is the calculation of true leadership." Bruce recognized the argument. He had heard variations from Ra's al Ghul, from others who believed that salvation required destruction, that peace demanded blood. "There's always another way," he said. "One that doesn't require becoming what you claim to fight against. You will learn otherwise," Vader stated with finality. "Now, we will resume our journey to the anomaly coordinates. I trust this demonstration has clarified what cooperation with the Empire entails and what resistance costs." As they left the hangar bay, Bruce felt the weight of choices yet to be made. Vader believed he was breaking Bruce's will, showing him the futility of opposition. In reality, he was only strengthening Batman's resolve. Every injustice witnessed was another reason to act, another debt to be repaid. The journey to the anomaly site resumed, but now Bruce's calculations had changed. It was no longer simply about finding a way home, it was about what he would do before that opportunity arose. What mark the Dark Knight would leave on this galaxy far, far away. 3 days later, the Devastator reached the coordinates of Bruce's arrival in this universe. The sector appeared unremarkable, empty space far from major systems, no planetary bodies or significant stellar phenomena. Yet Vader seemed satisfied, ordering intensive scans of the region. Our sensors detect residual energy patterns consistent with the anomaly that brought you here, Vader informed Bruce as they observed the readings. Unusual quantum fluctuations, tachyon emissions, similar to those produced by experimental hyperdrive technology. Bruce studied the data with careful attention. These patterns are consistent with theoretical models of interdimensional transfer from my world. The energy signature suggests a controlled event rather than a natural phenomenon. Yes, Vader agreed. Someone or something intentionally created the pathway that brought you here. This confirmation aligned with Bruce's suspicions. The criminal he had been pursuing in Gotham had activated a device technology that might have originated from this galaxy, or at least been inspired by its scientific principles. The implications were disturbing. If such pathways could be deliberately created, what else might cross between universes, and to what purpose? "We will establish a research facility in this sector," Vader announced. "Imperial scientists will attempt to recreate the conditions of your arrival, to understand the mechanisms involved." "And the Emperor's interest in this?" Bruce pressed. "What does Palpatine hope to gain from interdimensional travel?" Vader's response was measured. "The Emperor's vision extends beyond the boundaries of this galaxy, beyond limitations others accept as immutable. That is all you need to know." Bruce understood the implication. Palpatine sought to expand his dominion not just across this galaxy, but potentially to others, perhaps even to Earth. The threat this represented could not be overstated. Whatever Bruce's personal desire to return home, he could not be party to opening a doorway that might allow the Empire access to his world. "The rebels," Bruce said, changing subjects deliberately. "The ones captured in the ambush. What's happened to them?" "They have been questioned," Vader replied. "Some have provided useful information, others remain resistant, including Captain Vanya." Vader studied him. "Your concern for these rebels is misplaced. They would not extend the same consideration to you." "That's not an answer," Bruce observed. "The captain has proven unusually resilient," Vader acknowledged. "Her interrogation continues." Bruce nodded once, expression revealing nothing of his thoughts. Inside, however, a plan was taking shape. The pieces were aligning: the research project, the captured rebels, the vulnerability inherent in exploring unknown scientific territory. Batman had always excelled at exploiting such convergence points, turning strength into weakness, certainty into chaos. Over the following weeks, an Imperial research station took form in the empty sector. Specialized equipment was transported from Coruscant, scientific personnel arrived, and security systems were established. Bruce was granted limited access to the facility, ostensibly to provide insights based on his unique experience as a dimensional traveler. In reality, he used every opportunity to gather intelligence, to understand the station's systems and protocols, to identify potential allies among the personnel. Some scientists showed subtle dissatisfaction with Imperial oversight, discomfort with the military presence that surrounded their research. Bruce noted these individuals, carefully cultivating professional relationships that might later be leveraged. The captured rebels, including Vanya, were transferred to the station for what was officially termed specialized interrogation. Bruce understood the euphemism. The Empire hoped that proximity to the anomaly research might yield new methods of breaking resistance, perhaps through force-related techniques Vader wished to explore. Throughout this period, Bruce maintained his outward cooperation with Imperial authorities, providing technical assistance that was genuine but carefully limited. He helped refine scanning equipment, contributed to theoretical models, even assisted in designing containment systems, all while ensuring none of his contributions would enable actual success in recreating the dimensional portal. Vader seemed to accept Bruce's cooperation at face value, though the Dark Lord's inscrutable presence offered no certainty. Perhaps he sensed Bruce's underlying intentions through the Force, perhaps not. Either way, the game of deception and counter-deception continued, each man taking the measure of the other while revealing as little as possible of their true thoughts. The opportunity Bruce had been waiting for came 52 days after his arrival at the research station. A scheduled test of the experimental dimensional resonance equipment, an attempt to recreate the energy pattern that had accompanied Bruce's transfer between universes. Security would be focused on the test chamber, personnel would be operating under strict protocols, and system resources would be diverted to power the experiment. Perfect conditions for what Batman did best: exploit diversion, manipulate systems, and vanish into shadows. The day of the test, Bruce was positioned in the observation center alongside senior researchers and Imperial officers. Vader had been called away to address a priority communication from the Emperor, a stroke of fortune Bruce hadn't anticipated but gladly accepted. Primary systems engaged, the lead scientist announced. Tachyon field stabilizing at 60% of theoretical threshold. Bruce watched the readouts carefully. The experiment was impressive but fundamentally flawed by his calculation. The approach would never succeed in creating a stable interdimensional pathway. Still, the energy being generated was substantial and potentially useful for his purposes. Increasing power to secondary containment grid, another technician reported. Quantum fluctuation patterns approaching target parameters. As the test proceeded, Bruce activated a device he had constructed in secret using components smuggled from various station systems. Small enough to conceal in his palm, it would interface with the station's power grid at a specific moment, creating a cascade of controlled overloads through non-critical systems. Not enough to endanger lives, but sufficient to trigger emergency protocols. The device activated precisely as the experiment reached its peak energy output. Throughout the station, lighting systems flickered, communication arrays reset, and security doors initiated automatic lockdown sequences. Controlled chaos, precisely as Batman had engineered. System fluctuation detected. A technician called out. Power surges in sectors 7 through 12. Stabilize the primary containment field. The lead scientist ordered. All non-essential personnel evacuate to designated safety zones. In the resulting confusion, Bruce slipped away from the observation center, moving with purpose through corridors now dimly lit by emergency lighting. His first objective, the security center. From there, he could access the detention-level controls and locate Vanya and the other rebel prisoners. The security center was minimally staffed due to the emergency protocols, most officers having deployed to secure critical areas. Bruce neutralized the remaining personnel with quick, non-lethal strikes, then locked the doors and accessed the main control systems. "Computer, locate detention block," he commanded. "Detention block located in Sector 8, Level 3, the system responded. "Current status, secure. Emergency protocols in effect." Bruce overrode the protocols, creating a security clearance using codes he had methodically gathered over weeks of observation. The station schematics appeared on the main display, showing him not only the detention block, but the positions of all security personnel throughout the facility. Next, he accessed the communication systems, creating a looped feed of normal operations for any remote monitoring. To an outside observer, the security center would appear functional but experiencing minor difficulties due to the power fluctuations. With the groundwork laid, Bruce moved to the weapons locker, equipping himself with a blaster and other tools that might prove useful. His confiscated equipment remained in a high-security storage area too heavily guarded to access immediately, but Batman had never relied solely on gadgets. The journey to the detention block required careful navigation through maintenance shafts and emergency corridors to avoid Imperial troops responding to the disruption. Bruce moved efficiently, his mental map of the station guiding each decision. At the detention level, he encountered the first serious resistance, a squad of stormtroopers guarding the main entrance. Bruce didn't hesitate. He fired the blaster at a junction box overhead, causing a shower of sparks and temporary darkness. In the confusion, he moved among the troopers like a ghost, disabling each with precise strikes to vulnerable points in their armor. When the emergency lighting reactivated, 6 stormtroopers lay unconscious, and Bruce was already accessing the detention block controls. The cell doors opened with a hydraulic hiss, revealing the captured rebels. Most showed signs of interrogation, bruises, haunted expressions, the characteristic pallor of those subjected to Imperial mind probes. Vanya was in the final cell, her condition worse than the others. She looked up as Bruce entered, recognition slowly dawning through the haze of pain. "The shadow," she whispered hoarsely. "You came. Can you walk?" Bruce asked, already, assessing her injuries. Severe but not life-threatening. For a chance at escape. "Watch me." She struggled to her feet, determination overriding physical weakness. "The others?" "Already free," Bruce confirmed. "We don't have much time. Vader is temporarily away from the station, but that advantage won't last." Vanya nodded, then fixed him with an intense stare. "Why?" "Last I saw, you were standing beside him while we were taken prisoner." "I don't work for the Empire," Bruce stated simply. "I needed information, access, and time to plan. Now I need allies." A grim smile crossed Vanya's face. "Good enough for me. What's the plan?" "First, we secure transportation," Bruce explained as they moved to join the other freed prisoners. "There's a Lambda-class shuttle in the auxiliary hangar undergoing maintenance. Minimal security due to the current situation." "And after we escape?" one of the other rebels asked. "We destroy this facility," Bruce replied. "The Empire is attempting to create technology that could threaten not just your galaxy but others. That can't be allowed to happen." The rebels exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from doubt to resolve. They had witnessed firsthand the Empire's methods, understood the danger of such power in Imperial hands. "How do we destroy a station this size with no weapons?" Vanya questioned. Bruce led them through service corridors toward the auxiliary hangar. "We don't need weapons. The station will destroy itself." At their confused looks, he elaborated. "The experimental equipment is attempting to create a stable dimensional gateway. I've modified the containment systems to fail in a specific sequence once power reaches maximum levels." "You've been planning this since you got here," Vanya realized. "Since the moment Vader brought me on board the Devastator," Bruce corrected. They reached the auxiliary hangar with minimal resistance, encountering only maintenance droids and a skeleton crew easily subdued. The Lambda shuttle sat on the landing pad, its ramp lowered for ongoing repairs. Bruce quickly assessed the ship's status. "Life support and engines are operational," he reported. "Navigation systems need to be reset, but that can be done once we're away from the station." As the rebels boarded, Bruce accessed the hangar control systems, overriding safety protocols to open the main doors while disabling the automatic alert that would normally accompany such action. It wouldn't fool anyone monitoring closely, but it might delay response long enough for their escape. "We need to move," Bruce announced, boarding the shuttle. "Vader will sense the disturbance in the Force when he returns. We want to be well away before that happens." Vanya took the pilot's position, her hands moving over the controls with practiced efficiency despite her injuries. "This isn't my first Imperial shuttle heist," she explained at Bruce's questioning look. Pre-flight sequence initiated, preparing for emergency departure. The shuttle's engines hummed to life, repulsors lifting the craft from the hangar floor. Bruce monitored the station's communication channels, alert for any sign their escape had been detected. So far, Imperial forces remained focused on the experimental chamber and the systems affected by his controlled overloads. As they cleared the hangar doors, however, alarms finally sounded throughout the station. "Unauthorized shuttle launch detected," an Imperial voice announced over the comms. "Security breach in detention level. All fighters scramble. Repeat, all fighters scramble." "They're quick," Vanya observed, accelerating the shuttle away from the station, calculating jump coordinates now. "We need to stay in the system until the experiment reaches critical levels," Bruce reminded her. "Otherwise, the self-destruct sequence I programmed won't activate." Vanya nodded grimly. So, we play catch me if you can with TIE fighters while waiting for your sabotage to kick in. Wonderful. Despite her words, a fierce grin crossed her face. Just like old times. The first Imperial fighters appeared on sensors, closing rapidly from the station. Vanya executed evasive maneuvers, demonstrating piloting skills that impressed even Bruce. The shuttle, designed for transport rather than combat, groaned under the strain of maneuvers it was never intended to perform. Weapon systems? Bruce asked, moving to the co-pilot position. Limited, Vanya replied, rolling the shuttle to avoid incoming fire. 2 forward laser cannons, basic targeting. Better than nothing. Bruce took control of the weapons, quickly adapting to the unfamiliar interface. His experience with advanced technology on Earth, combined with weeks studying Imperial systems, allowed him to compensate for the differences. When he fired, the shots were precisely calculated, disabling rather than destroying the pursuing fighters. "You're good," Vanya commented as another TIE veered away, its systems damaged but pilot alive. "Most people shoot to kill." "I don't," Bruce said simply. The chase continued, more Imperial fighters joining the pursuit as the station marshaled its forces. Bruce checked the chronometer, mentally calculating how long until the experimental equipment reached the critical point he had engineered. Minutes, at most. Suddenly, a new presence appeared on their sensors. Larger than the TIE fighters, moving with deadly purpose. Vader's personal fighter, Vanya identified, her voice tightening. "He's returned." Bruce felt a chill that had nothing to do with the shuttle's temperature. If Vader had indeed returned and joined the pursuit personally, their chances of escape had just diminished significantly. The Dark Lord had demonstrated capabilities far beyond ordinary pilots, beyond ordinary humans. "How long until we can jump to hyperspace?" Bruce asked. "Coordinates are set," Vanya replied, "but we need to clear the Imperial interdiction field. 2 minutes at current speed. 2 minutes they might not have." On the sensors, Vader's fighter closed with unnatural speed, its trajectory suggesting not just superior piloting, but foreknowledge of their intended course. The Force at work, Bruce realized, allowing Vader to anticipate their movements. "We need to be unpredictable," Bruce decided. "Take us toward the experimental radiation field." Vanya looked at him sharply. "That's suicide. The quantum fluctuations will tear this shuttle apart." "Not if we skim the edge," Bruce countered. "The radiation will mask our signature and disrupt Vader's ability to predict our movements." It was a desperate gamble, but Vanya apparently recognized the logic. She adjusted course, bringing the shuttle perilously close to the expanding field of exotic radiation surrounding the research station. Warning alarms activated throughout the cockpit, sensors registering the dangerous energy levels just outside their hull. Vader's fighter followed, but more cautiously now. Even the Dark Lord respected the laws of physics, it seemed. The other TIE fighters fell back entirely, unwilling to risk destruction in the radiation field. 30 seconds to hyperspace capability, Vanya reported, her hands steady despite the danger. "Assuming we don't disintegrate first." Bruce monitored the station sensors, watching as energy levels climbed toward the breaking point he had engineered. "We'll make it," he stated with quiet certainty. "The station won't." As if triggered by his words, the first explosions bloomed within the research facility. System after system overloaded as the containment fields around the experimental chamber failed in the precise sequence Bruce had programmed. The quantum fluctuations, no longer controlled, expanded exponentially. "That's our cue," Bruce said. "Get us out of here. Now." Vanya didn't need to be told twice. She pushed the shuttle to maximum acceleration, breaking free of the radiation field and reaching the minimum safe distance for hyperspace. Entry. Behind them, the research station began to break apart, secondary explosions cascading through its structure as reactor systems failed. Hyperspace in 3, 2, 1. Vanya counted down, The stars stretched into lines, then the swirling blue tunnel of hyperspace enveloped them. They had escaped. Behind them, the Imperial Research Station collapsed in on itself, the experimental technology destroyed along with any hope of recreating the dimensional gateway that had brought Batman to this galaxy. Vader's fighter, caught in the expanding wave of quantum disruption, was forced to break off pursuit. Bruce had no illusions that the Dark Lord had been defeated, merely delayed, but delay was all they had needed. In the relative safety of hyperspace, the rebels gathered in the shuttle's main compartment. Their expressions mixed exhaustion and exhilaration, the natural high that came from surviving against impossible odds. "Where are we headed?" Bruce asked Vanya. "Secondary rendezvous coordinates," she replied. "We maintain backups for situations exactly like this. The Alliance will have a frigate waiting to recover us." Bruce nodded, satisfied. The immediate goals had been achieved, the rebels freed, the dimensional research destroyed, escape secured. But larger questions remained. He was still stranded in this galaxy, still hunted by the Empire, still facing a future vastly different from anything he had planned. "What will you do now?" Vanya asked, as if reading his thoughts. "The Empire won't forget what you've done, Vader especially." Bruce looked out at the hypnotic patterns of hyperspace, considering his options. "Continue what I started," he finally said. "Fight against injustice, protect the innocent, find a way home. The usual." A tired smile crossed Vanya's face. "With the Alliance?" "With anyone who stands against tyranny," Bruce replied. "For now, that includes the Alliance." The shuttle continued its journey through hyperspace, carrying Batman toward an uncertain future in a galaxy far from Gotham. Behind him, the dimensional gateway that might have offered a path home collapsed into quantum particles, scattered across space. The way back was closed, at least for now. But Bruce Wayne had never been one to accept limitation or surrender to circumstance. If a way existed to return to Earth, to Gotham, to the life and responsibilities he had left behind, he would find it. And in the meantime, there was work to be done, a darkness to fight, people to protect. In any universe, that was what Batman did. Aboard the command ship of the Alliance fleet, General Mon Mothma studied the man standing before her with careful consideration. The legends that had begun to circulate about the shadow of Coruscant seemed difficult to reconcile with the composed, analytical figure who now presented his tactical assessment of Imperial vulnerabilities. "Your insights into Imperial security protocols are impressive, Mr. Wayne," she acknowledged. "Particularly your analysis of the predictive algorithms they use for fleet deployment." Bruce nodded once in acknowledgement. 3 months had passed since his escape from the research station with Vanya and the other prisoners. In that time, he had fully committed to assisting the rebellion, recognizing in their struggle echoes of every fight for justice he had ever undertaken. "The Empire relies on patterns," Bruce explained. "Even their randomization has structure. Identify the underlying logic, and you can anticipate their movements with 78% accuracy, which gives us a significant advantage in planning operations," Admiral Akbar observed from his position at the briefing table. The Mon Calamari commander had initially been skeptical of Bruce's contributions, but had gradually come to respect the tactical mind that had outmaneuvered even Darth Vader. "There's something else," Bruce continued, activating a holographic display. "During my time at the research facility, I gained access to classified data regarding a major Imperial project, something called Death Star." The Alliance leadership exchanged concerned glances. "We've heard rumors," Mon Mothma admitted, "but solid intelligence has been elusive. From what I could access, it's a battle station with firepower sufficient to destroy entire planets," Bruce said. "Currently under construction in the Outer Rim, the Empire is accelerating the project timeline, possibly in response to growing rebellion successes." The implications settled heavily over the gathering. A weapon of such magnitude would change the nature of the conflict, potentially ending any hope of successful resistance against Imperial rule. "We need more information," Mon Mothma decided. "Complete technical readouts, construction schedules, defensive capabilities." "I've identified a possible source," Bruce replied. "An Imperial data vault on Scarif contains the complete plans. Security is formidable but not impenetrable." The briefing continued, strategies debated, contingencies planned. Bruce participated fully, contributing insights born from years of tactical experience against organized crime and supervillains on Earth. Different context, similar principles. Identify weakness, exploit advantage, anticipate response. When the meeting concluded, Vanya, now promoted to commander following her successful escape, approached Bruce. "You've become quite the rebel strategist," she observed. "The troops have started calling you the Dark General when the brass isn't listening." Bruce allowed himself a small smile. "I prefer Batman." "So you've mentioned." Vanya studied him with genuine curiosity. "Do you ever regret it? Helping us instead of finding a way home?" "Who says I'm not doing both?" Bruce countered. He hesitated, then elaborated. "The dimensional gateway that brought me here was destroyed, but the principles behind it exist throughout the galaxy. Kyber crystals, hyperspace technology, aspects of the Force, and itself all manipulate space-time in ways that might eventually provide a path back. Meanwhile, you help overthrow an empire," Vanya summarized with a wry smile. "I've faced worse odds," Bruce replied. Later, alone in his quarters, Bruce reviewed the data he had compiled on potential routes home. The scientist in him, the side of Bruce Wayne, often overshadowed by Batman but never absent methodically analyzed theories of interdimensional travel, correlating them with the advanced physics of this galaxy. His wall displayed maps of Kyber crystal deposits, ancient Jedi temple locations where Force energies concentrated, theoretical hyperspace anomalies that might serve his purpose. A conspiracy board of routes home, each possibility meticulously researched and evaluated. Alongside these, another display tracked Imperial movements, Vader's last known location, and potential targets for rebellion operations. 2 missions, equally important: find a way back to Gotham and help free this galaxy from tyranny before he left. Bruce Wayne had always excelled at multitasking. A communication alert interrupted his work. "Wayne," he answered, "the Council has approved your operation," Mon Mothma's voice informed him. "Resources will be allocated as requested. We're designating it Operation Twilight." "Thank you, General," Bruce replied. "My team will be ready." The operation, a precision strike against an Imperial intelligence hub on Coronet, was one Bruce had designed specifically to gather data on both the Death Star project and potential Force-related technologies that might aid his research into dimensional travel. The Alliance leadership had approved it based on the military value alone. They didn't need to know about his secondary objectives. Bruce returned to his preparations, checking the modified armor he now wore, a synthesis of his batsuit technology with materials available in this galaxy. The symbol remained, the bat emblem now rendered in reinforced, Durasteel rather than Kevlar composite. Some things remained constant across universes. As he worked, Bruce reflected on how quickly he had adapted to this new reality. Perhaps because fundamentally the fight remained the same, the powerful exploiting the weak, fear used as control, justice sacrificed for order, different galaxy, same darkness. And wherever such darkness existed, Batman would stand against it. A tremor passed through the ship, the distinctive feeling of entering hyperspace. The Alliance fleet was moving, positioning for upcoming operations. Bruce secured his equipment and prepared to brief the special operations team he would lead. Time to focus on the mission at hand. The path home would reveal itself eventually. Until then, the Dark Knight had a galaxy to defend. In his meditation chamber aboard the Executor, Darth Vader knelt before the holographic image of Emperor Palpatine. The chamber's pressurized atmosphere allowed the Dark Lord to remove his helmet, exposing his scarred visage to his master's scrutiny. "The vigilante from Coruscant continues to elude our forces, my master," Vader reported. "Alliance operations bearing his tactical signature have increased by 40% in the past month alone." "This Batman interests me," the Emperor said. his voice a dry whisper even through the holographic transmission. A warrior from another universe, neither Jedi nor Sith, yet possessing skills that challenge even you, Lord Vader. His technology and tactical abilities are impressive, Vader acknowledged. But he is merely human. Without the Force, he remains fundamentally limited. Palpatine's damaged face creased in a smile that held no warmth. Is he? Our reports suggest otherwise. The destruction of the research station, the precision of rebel strikes under his guidance, the growing legend among both Imperial troops and rebel forces. These are not the acts of an ordinary man. Vader remained silent, remembering his encounters with Bruce Wayne. The mental discipline that had partially resisted Force intrusion, the combat skills that had momentarily matched his own, the strategic mind that had outmaneuvered Imperial forces multiple times since. No, Batman was not ordinary, but neither was he Force-sensitive in any conventional sense. Perhaps, Vader finally said, he represents something we have not encountered before. A potential asset if he could be turned. Yes, Palpatine hissed. My thoughts exactly. Find him, Lord Vader. Bring him to me. Not as a prisoner, but as a potential ally. Show him the true power of the dark side, power that might open the way to his home world. And if he refuses? Vader asked, already knowing the answer. Then extract whatever knowledge he possesses about interdimensional travel and eliminate him. The Emperor's image flickered. He has become a symbol of hope to the rebellion. Symbols must be broken or claimed for our own purposes. It will be done, my master. Vader bowed his head as the transmission ended. As his helmet resealed with a mechanical hiss, Vader contemplated the strange connection he had sensed with Bruce Wayne during their encounters. Not through the Force directly, but something more subtle, a resonance of shared experience, of trauma transmuted into purpose, of darkness channeled toward defined ends. The vigilante's mind had revealed fragments, parents murdered before him as a child, a vow made in grief and rage, a life dedicated to imposing order on chaos through fear and symbol. Familiar themes to Anakin Skywalker, though the paths taken had diverged significantly. Vader rose, his decision made. He would find Batman again, would offer one final chance at alliance. Not because the Emperor commanded it, but because something in the shattered remnants of Anakin Skywalker recognized a kindred spirit in Bruce Wayne, someone who had faced the abyss and emerged transformed. The difference was that Wayne still believed he fought for light, while Vader had embraced the truth and power of darkness, a choice the vigilante would soon face himself. On the forest moon of Endor, Batman crouched in the shadows of massive trees, observing the Imperial shield generator that protected the Death Star construction site in orbit above. After months of operations against Imperial targets, gathering intelligence and building alliance capabilities, the final confrontation approached, the Death Star. A weapon of unimaginable destruction, the embodiment of the Emperor's philosophy, rule through fear of overwhelming force. Bruce had dedicated himself to ensuring the battle station never reached completion, working alongside Alliance leaders to develop the operation that would now unfold. Shield generator perimeter has 28 stormtroopers on rotating patrol patterns. Bruce reported via secure comlink to General Solo, who led the ground team. Predictable intervals, standard Imperial formation, vulnerable to small team infiltration through the southeastern approach. Copy that, Solo replied. We're moving into position now. You sure about this back door you found? I designed similar security systems on Earth, Bruce confirmed. The principle remains the same. Perfect defense is impossible, so architects build in maintenance access points. This one is camouflaged but functional. If you say so, Wayne. Solo sounded skeptical but committed. Just be ready with that distraction when we give the signal. Bruce acknowledged and moved silently through the forest, positioning himself for the next phase. His role in the operation was multifaceted: intelligence gathering, tactical support, and when necessary, direct action. Today would require all three. As he waited, Bruce reflected on his journey since arriving in this galaxy. What had begun as a desperate search for a way home had evolved into something more profound. He had found purpose here, allies who fought for principles he respected, a cause worthy of his skills and sacrifice. And yet, Gotham remained his true responsibility. Bruce had continued his research into dimensional travel alongside his work for the Rebellion, making incremental progress. Recent discoveries involving kyber crystals and their resonance with force energies offered promising avenues, suggesting that a controlled pathway might eventually be possible, but not before this battle concluded. Not before the Death Star was destroyed and the Emperor's grasp on the galaxy broken. Batman had made a commitment, and he would see it through. The comlink chirped Solo's signal. Time to move. Bruce activated devices he had planted throughout the surrounding forest, creating a series of controlled explosions far from the actual rebel team's position. As Imperial forces responded to the apparent attack, he infiltrated the perimeter from the opposite direction, targeting the generator's secondary control systems. Inside the facility, Bruce moved with practiced stealth, neutralizing Imperial technicians with non-lethal precision. The Alliance needed the shield down, not a massacre of technical personnel. Each unconscious officer was secured with restraints, their communications disabled. "I'm in position at the main control room," Bruce reported. "Ready to initiate shield disruption on your mark." "Stand by," Solo replied. "We've encountered resistance at the main entrance. Princess Leia's team is proceeding to your position for backup," Bruce acknowledged, continuing his preparations for disabling the shield generator. The plan had multiple contingencies, multiple paths to success, a Batman specialty. If Solo's team couldn't reach the primary controls, Bruce's position at the secondary systems would provide an alternative. A disturbance in the air alerted him moments before the door slid open. Bruce spun, ready to neutralize another Imperial officer, then froze at the distinctive sound of mechanized breathing. Darth Vader stood in the doorway, lightsaber ignited, crimson blade illuminating the control room with blood-red light. "Batman," the Dark Lord acknowledged. "Our game concludes." Bruce assessed the situation with tactical clarity. Direct combat against Vader had proven ineffective before. The priority remained disabling the shield generator to allow the Alliance fleet to attack the Death Star. Everything else was secondary. "Lord Vader," Bruce replied, buying seconds to adjust his strategy. "I assumed you'd be on the Death Star with your Emperor." "My master predicted your involvement in this attack," Vader said, advancing into the room. "He has a particular interest in meeting you before the rebellion is finally crushed." Bruce shifted position, maintaining distance while moving closer to the control systems. "I'm flattered, but I have a previous engagement with these shield controls." "A futile effort," Vader dismissed. "Even if you succeeded, the Alliance fleet will find more than they anticipated. The Death Star is fully operational. The Emperor has anticipated every move in this pitiful rebellion." This was new information, potentially devastating to the Alliance plan. Bruce filed it away, focusing on immediate priorities. "If that's true, why are you here instead of witnessing his triumph?" Vader paused, and Bruce sensed hesitation behind the impassive mask. "Because you represent a different path, one not foreseen by the Emperor. Your arrival from another universe has created possibilities. I'm not interested in joining the Empire," Bruce stated firmly. "We've had this conversation before." "Not the Empire," Vader clarified, surprising Bruce. Something new. Something beyond Palpatine's vision. The Dark Lord lowered his lightsaber slightly. "You have seen the corruption in both the Empire and the Rebellion, the flaws inherent in their structures. Together, we could forge a different future for this galaxy." Bruce studied Vader carefully. Something had changed in the Sith Lord's demeanor, some shift in motivation or perspective. "You're proposing betraying your master," he realized, "overthrowing Palpatine." "He fears your potential," Vader confirmed, "as he fears anyone he cannot fully control. But I recognize what you truly are. A kindred spirit forged in trauma, dedicated to a vision of order. Our visions differ significantly, Bruce countered, though part of him, the analytical, pragmatic part, noted the tactical advantage such an alliance might provide. I don't achieve order through fear and oppression. Don't you? Vader challenged. The Batman uses fear as his primary weapon. The shadow that terrifies criminals, the myth designed to intimidate. How different is your methodology, truly? The question struck uncomfortably close to criticisms Bruce had faced before, doubts he had wrestled with during dark nights in Gotham. The line between justice and vengeance, between necessary fear and cruel terror, had always required vigilant monitoring. The difference is in the purpose, Bruce answered firmly, and in the limits I impose. I don't kill, I don't torture, I don't sacrifice innocence for some greater good. Noble sentiments, Vader acknowledged, but ultimately limiting. The galaxy requires stronger medicine than your half measures can provide. The Dark Lord extended his hand, an echo of the gesture he had made during their first encounter. Join me. With your strategic mind and my power in the Force, we can bring true order. And I can help you return to your Gotham, to continue your work there. It was a tempting offer, not because Bruce considered accepting, but because it confirmed his research was viable. If Vader believed interdimensional travel was possible, then Bruce's own investigations were on the right track. Before Bruce could respond, the facility shook with the impact of explosions outside. Solo's team had engaged the Imperial forces in earnest. Time was running short. A final offer, Vader stated. Allies or adversaries, choose now. Bruce's decision had been made long before this moment. I stand against oppression, Lord Vader. Always. With that declaration, Bruce threw a flashbang device he had prepared for exactly this contingency. Even as it detonated, he was moving, diving toward the shield control systems. Vader deflected much of the flash with Force-enhanced reflexes, but the momentary distraction was all Bruce needed. His hands flew over the controls, executing the shutdown sequence he had memorized. Warning alarms blared as the planetary shield began to collapse, opening the way for the Alliance fleet to attack the Death Star. Vader recovered quickly, lightsaber slashing toward Bruce with lethal intent. Bruce barely evaded, feeling the heat of the blade as it missed him by centimeters and carved through the control panel instead. You have chosen poorly, Vader intoned, advancing relentlessly. Bruce deployed every countermeasure he had developed since their last encounter. Sonic disruptors calibrated to the frequency of Vader's helmet systems, electromagnetic pulses designed to interfere with his life support, flash devices to overload optical sensors. Each bought seconds, not victory, against the Dark Lord's power. The shield is down, Bruce stated, backing toward the secondary exit. The Alliance fleet will destroy the Death Star. Your Emperor's vision ends today. Perhaps, Vader acknowledged, but so does yours. The Dark Lord gestured, and Bruce felt himself lifted from the ground, invisible force constricting around his throat. His countermeasures were exhausted, his position untenable. As consciousness began to fade, Bruce activated his final contingency, a remote detonator triggering explosives placed throughout the facility during his infiltration. The resulting blast separated him from Vader's telekinetic grip, throwing both men in opposite directions as structural supports failed and sections of the facility began to collapse. Bruce rolled with the impact, years of training allowing him to absorb the force and regain his footing despite injuries. Vader too had weathered the explosion, rising amid flames and debris, cape smoldering but determination undiminished. The two adversaries faced each other across the burning control room, a symbolic tableau of opposing forces. It ends here, Vader declared, raising his lightsaber. Not yet, Bruce countered. He triggered a secondary explosion directly above Vader's position, bringing down a massive section of ceiling. The Dark Lord deflected much of it with force power, but the distraction allowed Bruce to escape through the emergency exit into the forests of Endor. Outside, the battle raged between Imperial forces and the Alliance strike team. Bruce rejoined Solo's group, providing tactical support as they secured the area. Above, visible even in daylight, flashes of combat illuminated the space around the Death Star as the Alliance fleet engaged Imperial defenses. "The shield is down," Bruce confirmed to General Solo, but Vader was waiting. He said the Death Star is already operational. Solo's expression hardened. "Let's hope our friends up there work fast." Then, hours later, as Rebel forces consolidated their victory on Endor, Bruce stood apart from the celebrations, watching the debris of the destroyed Death Star burn through the atmosphere, a meteor shower created by the death of a nightmare weapon. The Emperor had been aboard when it exploded, according to Alliance intelligence. And Vader? Bruce had sensed no death, no conclusion to their confrontation. Somehow, he knew the Dark Lord had survived, had escaped the destruction of the Death Star. Their paths would cross again. Commander Vanya found him at the edge of the Ewok village, where Alliance forces had established their base. "Not joining the victory party?" she asked. "I'm not finished here," Bruce replied simply. Vanya nodded, understanding. "The Empire isn't defeated yet. Without the Emperor, they'll fragment. But Imperial forces still control most of the galaxy." "That's not what I meant," Bruce said. He turned to face her directly. "I've made a breakthrough in my research. The Kyber crystal resonance patterns, combined with specific force-sensitive locations. I believe I've found a way to create a stable pathway back to my universe." Surprise and something like disappointment crossed Vanya's face. "You're leaving? Now?" "Soon," Bruce confirmed. "There's a Jedi temple on Dantooine with the specific energy pattern I need. According to Alliance intelligence, it's currently unoccupied by Imperial forces." "The war isn't over, Wayne," Vanya reminded him. "The Alliance still needs your tactical expertise, your leadership." Bruce placed a hand on her shoulder. "The Alliance has proven it can win without me. What you're fighting for now is the aftermath, building something better than what came before. That's not my specialty." A rare smile crossed his face. "Besides, Gotham needs its Dark Knight." Vanya studied him for a long moment, then nodded acceptance. "When do you leave?" "Tomorrow," Bruce decided. "I've already spoken with Mon Mothma. She understands." Later, as twin moons rose over the forest of Endor, Batman prepared the modified shuttle that would take him to Dantooine. His research materials, the specialized equipment he had constructed, the modified Kyber crystals collected during operations against Imperial mining facilities, all were carefully secured for transport. Luke Skywalker, the Jedi who had faced the Emperor directly during the battle, approached as Bruce completed his preparations. The young man carried himself differently now, a new certainty in his movements, a peace beneath the lingering sadness in his eyes. "Commander Vanya told me you're attempting to return to your own universe," Skywalker said. Bruce nodded. "The Force energy at the Dantooine Temple should provide the final component needed to stabilize the dimensional gateway. There's something you should know," Skywalker said quietly. "About Vader, about what happened on the Death Star." Bruce paused in his work, giving the Jedi his full attention. "He survived?" "No," Skywalker shook his head. "Darth Vader died saving me from the Emperor. He turned back to the light at the end, rejected the dark side." A pause, heavy with emotion. "He was my father." The revelation landed with weight. Bruce considered all his interactions with Vader, the strange connection he had sensed, the offer of alliance that had seemed to come from something beyond mere Imperial ambition. "He saw something in you," Skywalker continued, "something that reminded him there were other paths than the dark side. Before he died, he mentioned you." "What did he say?" Bruce asked, genuinely curious. "That you were like him, but stronger. You'd faced the same darkness, but hadn't surrendered to it." Skywalker met Bruce's gaze directly. "I think, in his way, he respected you more than anyone else in this galaxy." Bruce absorbed this, filing it alongside everything else he had learned about this universe and its complex interplay of light and darkness, freedom and order, choice and destiny. "Thank you for telling me," he said simply. Skywalker nodded. "May the Force be with you, Batman, whatever universe you call home." The next morning, Bruce departed Endor, leaving behind a galaxy in transition. The Empire would fragment without its Emperor. The Alliance would face the challenges of building rather than destroying, and a new generation of Jedi would rise under Skywalker's guidance. A future with potential for both greatness and tragedy, like any other. Bruce set course for Dantooine, reviewing his calculations one final time. The theory was sound, the components assembled, the energy requirements calculated. If successful, the dimensional gateway would open for approximately 60 seconds, enough time to cross back to the coordinates of his original departure from Earth. Back to Gotham, back to the never-ending battle against crime and corruption, back to Alfred, to the Justice League, to the city that defined him as much as he defined it. As his shuttle entered hyperspace, Bruce Wayne allowed himself a moment of reflection on his time in this galaxy far, far away. He had arrived as a stranger, become a legend, helped topple an empire. Not a bad detour, all things considered. Batman always found his way home. Eventually. And when he returned to Gotham, he would carry with him lessons learned among the stars, about power and responsibility, about empires and rebellions, about the thin line between justice and vengeance that every Dark Knight must walk. The hyperspace tunnel enveloped his shuttle, carrying the Dark Knight toward his final mission in a galaxy that would remember him only as a shadow, a myth, a symbol of defiance against overwhelming darkness. In any universe, that was legacy enough.